The morning light from Kepler-7's twin suns streamed through the massive windows of the Galactic Defense Academy. Hien-Wu stretched his long, pale arms and looked around the dormitory. His twin sister Biol was already awake, sitting by the window and staring at the stars. Their silver hair caught the light, making them look like ghosts. "Another day of classes," Hien-Wu said with a yawn. "I wonder what they will teach us today." Biol turned to him with her bright blue eyes. "Father said we must learn everything we can. The Vextai people are counting on us to become good officers." The twins belonged to the Vextai race. Their people were tall and thin, with skin so pale it was almost white. They came from a world with 3 moons and gentle weather. War was something they read about in history books. Their planet had not seen fighting for over 1,000 years. Down the hall, Taiho was getting ready for class. He moved slowly because his body was made of living crystal. Each step made a soft ringing sound on the metal floor. His face looked like it was carved from blue stone, but his eyes glowed with warm light. Taiho came from the Morden people. They lived for thousands of years because their crystal bodies could heal from almost any wound. They were peaceful and wise. They spent their long lives making art and studying the stars. Fighting was something they did not understand. In the water section of the dormitory, So Young floated in her special suit. The suit was filled with the salty water from her homeworld. Through the clear helmet, her gills moved as she breathed the water. Her green skin had patterns that changed color with her mood. So Young was Relinary. Her people lived in the deep oceans of a water world. They were smart and kind, but they always put themselves first. If there was danger, a Relinary would save themselves before trying to help others. It was just how they were made. The 3 aliens met in the main hallway. They walked together toward their morning class. Around them, other cadets from different worlds talked and laughed. There were the rock-like granite people, the floating energy beings called wisps, and the furry Corvani with their big eyes. "I heard we have a new teacher today," Taiho said in his deep musical voice. "A human," Biol made a face. "Humans are so young. They only joined the galaxy 50 years ago. What could they teach us?" "Maybe how to use those loud weapons they like so much," So Young said from inside her water suit. Her voice sounded bubbly. "I heard they still use bullets and explosives." Hien-Wu laughed. "My father said humans are like children playing with dangerous toys. They barely know how to travel between stars." The 3 friends entered the large classroom and took their seats. The room was full of cadets from 12 different worlds. Everyone was talking about the new human teacher. Some were curious, others were not impressed. At exactly 9 o'clock, the door slid open. A human walked in. He was not very tall, with dark hair and serious eyes. His uniform was clean and neat, with many medals on his chest. He moved like a soldier, straight and strong. "Good morning, cadets," the human said in a clear voice. "I am Admiral Keejin Park. I will be teaching you about military history and battle tactics." Some of the alien cadets whispered to each other. They had expected someone younger. This human looked like he had seen many battles. Admiral Park walked to the front of the room and pressed a button. A large screen came down from the ceiling. "Today we will study primitive warfare tactics. You will learn how species fight when they do not have advanced technology." Hien-Wu and Biol looked at each other and smiled. This would be easy. Everyone knew that primitive fighting was simple and crude. "We will start with a conflict from my homeworld," Admiral Park said. "It was called World War II. It happened about 80 years ago." Taiho's crystal body flickered with amusement. 80 years was nothing to his people. It was like yesterday. "Before we begin," the Admiral said, "I want you to understand something. The footage you will see is real. Real people died in these battles. Real families lost their loved ones. This is not a game or a story. This is history." So Young's patterns changed to a light green, showing she was bored. How many people could have died in a primitive war? She thought, maybe a few thousand? The Admiral dimmed the lights. The conflict I will show you lasted 6 years. By the end, over 70 million humans were dead. The classroom went quiet. 70 million was more than the total population. But some worlds. That cannot be right, Bill whispered to her brother. No species would keep fighting after losing so many. Admiral Park heard her. You are correct to question this number, Cadet Bill. It does seem impossible. But you will understand as we continue. The screen lit up with black and white footage. It showed ships on a gray ocean under a cloudy sky. The image was grainy and old, but clear enough to see. This is the 6th of June, 1944, Admiral Park said. We called it Day-Day. Human forces were attacking a beach held by other humans. The beach was called Normandy. The cadets leaned forward to watch. They expected to see simple tactics and basic weapons. What they saw instead was hell. The screen showed small boats moving toward a beach. The boats were full of young human soldiers. They looked scared but determined. As the boats got closer to the shore, explosions began to hit the water around them. The defenders had machine guns and artillery placed on the cliffs above the beach. Admiral Park explained. They had months to prepare their positions. The first boat reached the shallow water. The front opened and soldiers ran out. Immediately, machine gun fire cut through them. Bodies fell into the red water. More soldiers kept coming. Hyun-woo felt sick. Why don't they retreat? He asked. Because retreat meant the mission would fail, Admiral Park said. And the mission was more important than their lives. More boats arrived. More soldiers ran onto the beach. More bodies fell. The water turned red with blood. The sand was covered with the dead and wounded, but the humans kept coming, wave after wave of soldiers. Charged up the beach. They climbed over the bodies of their friends. They ran toward the machine guns that were killing them. Some made it a few steps, others fell immediately. But they never stopped trying. Taeho's glow dimmed with shock. This is madness. No rational species would continue such an attack. You are right, Admiral Park said. It was madness, but it was also courage. And in the end it worked. The footage showed human soldiers finally reaching the top of the cliffs. They had taken the beach, but the cost was terrible. Thousands of young men lay dead on the sand and in the water. The attack succeeded, Admiral Park said. But we lost over 4,000 soldiers in one day on one beach. The alien cadets sat in stunned silence. They had never seen anything like this. In their worlds, battles stopped when losses became too high. It was logical. It made sense. This made no sense at all. Tomorrow, Admiral Park said as he turned on the lights, we will study urban warfare. Class dismissed. The cadets filed out. Slowly, nobody spoke. They were all thinking about what they had seen. These humans fought like they had no fear of death. They threw their lives away for objectives that seemed small and unimportant. As Hyun-woo, Byul, Taeho, and So-young walked back to their dormitory, Byul finally spoke. What kind of species does that? She asked quietly. Nobody had an answer. The next morning, the 4 alien cadets sat together at breakfast. None of them had slept well. The images of human soldiers dying on the beach kept playing in their minds. So-young picked at her food through the feeding tube in her helmet. I had bad dreams, she said. I kept seeing those humans running into the gunfire. They were so young, Byul whispered. Some of them looked like they had barely grown up. Taeho's crystal body was dim, showing his sadness. In my culture, we spend 100 years just learning how to think properly. Those humans were children. Hyun-woo pushed his food around his plate. Maybe today will be different. Maybe that beach battle was unusual. But deep down, he knew it would not be different. When they entered the classroom, Admiral Park was already there. He stood straight and serious, just like the day before. The big screen was ready, and the lights were already dim. Yesterday you saw an amphibious assault, the Admiral said. Today we will study urban warfare, fighting in cities. The screen came to life, showing a city covered in snow. The buildings were broken and burned. Smoke rose from the ruins. Bodies lay in the streets, covered by the white snow. This is Stalingrad, Admiral Park said. The battle lasted for 5 months. 2 million soldiers and civilians died here. So-young's water suit bubbled with shock. 2 million was more than the entire population of her home city. The footage changed to show the inside of a ruined building. Human soldiers crouched behind broken walls. They looked tired and hungry. Their clothes were torn and dirty. Ice covered their faces. The temperature was 40 degrees below zero, Admiral Park explained. Cold enough to kill most galactic species in minutes. On the screen, the human soldiers were fighting for a single room. They threw explosives at each other across a space no bigger than a bedroom. When the smoke cleared, both sides charged forward with knives and bayonets. Hyanwu watched in horror as humans fought hand-to-hand in the frozen rubble. They were killing each other over a few square meters of destroyed building. What was the strategic value of this room? Taeho asked, his voice shaking. Admiral Park looked at him with sad eyes. There was no strategic value. It was just another room in another ruined building. But it was their room, and they would not give it up. The footage continued. It showed humans eating leather from their boots because they had no food. It showed them melting snow for water. It showed them sleeping in the freezing cold with no blankets, but they kept fighting. Admiral, So Young asked, why didn't they just leave the city? It was already destroyed. What was the point? Pride, Admiral Park said simply. The alien cadets could not understand this answer. Pride was not worth dying for. Pride was not worth suffering for. Pride was just a feeling. The screen showed more scenes from the city. Humans crawling through sewers to attack their enemies. Humans fighting in complete darkness in the subway tunnels. Humans defending single buildings for weeks. Even when they were surrounded and had no hope of rescue, Beale started to hyperventilate. Her breathing got fast and shallow. In Vextai culture, when 15% of your soldiers were killed or wounded, you were supposed to retreat. It was the honorable thing to do. It saved lives and made sense, but these humans took 80% casualties and still kept fighting. This is not normal, she gasped. This is not how intelligent beings behave. The footage changed again. Now. It showed the Pacific Ocean and small islands covered with jungle. Human ships were approaching the beaches and explosions filled the air. This is the Pacific Theater, Admiral Park said. Humans fighting other humans for control of small islands. The screen showed an island that was barely a few miles across. It was just rock and sand and a few palm trees. But thousands of humans were dying to take it. So Young watched in amazement as human soldiers jumped out of boats and ran across beaches under heavy fire. They climbed up rocky cliffs while bullets flew around them. They charged into caves where their enemies were hiding. Admiral, she said, that island looks worthless. Why are they fighting so hard for a few miles of rock? Because that rock was a stepping stone, Admiral Park replied. Each island brought them closer to their goal. And they knew that every day they delayed meant more of their friends would die in prison camps. The footage showed what he meant. It showed human prisoners of war, starving and sick, trapped behind wire fences. The alien cadets saw humans who were nothing but skin and bones, barely alive. Their enemies were not treating prisoners well, Admiral Park said quietly. So they fought harder, hoping to save their friends. Hyanwu felt a strange feeling in his chest. His people, the Vextai, had rules about war. You were supposed to treat prisoners kindly. You were supposed to let medical workers help the wounded. You were supposed to fight with honor, but these humans were fighting an enemy that had no honor. And somehow, that made the humans fight even harder. The screen showed more islands, more beaches, more young human soldiers running into gunfire. Some islands took days to capture. Others took months. The cost in human lives was terrible, but they never stopped. They never gave up. Tae-ho watched a scene where human medics ran into active combat to save wounded soldiers. In his culture, the Morden would wait until the fighting stopped before helping the injured. It was logical and safe. But these human medics crawled through gunfire to reach their wounded friends. Many of them died trying to save others. They are risking their lives for people who are already hurt, Taeho said in confusion. That makes no tactical sense. No, Admiral Park agreed, but it makes perfect human sense. The footage continued for another hour. It showed battle after battle, island after island. The alien cadets saw humans fighting in jungles so thick they could barely see their enemies. They saw humans attacking fortified positions that should have been impossible to take. They saw humans dying for each other, over and over again. When the class finally ended, the four alien friends walked out in silence. They did not understand what they had seen. It went against everything they knew about logic and survival and common sense. That evening, they sat in the recreation room, trying to make sense of it all. Maybe humans are just stupid, Haiyan-Wu said, but he did not sound convinced. No, Beale replied. Stupid species don't build starships. They don't join galactic civilizations. There has to be another explanation. So Young floated in her water suit, thinking hard. My people have a saying, save yourself first, then help others. It keeps us alive. But these humans seem to have it backwards. Taeho's crystal body flickered with different colors as he processed what he had learned. In my long life, I have studied many species. I have never seen anything like this. They fight like they are not afraid to die. Maybe they are not afraid, Beale said quietly. The four friends sat in silence, thinking about beaches covered with bodies and cities full of frozen corpses and tiny islands that cost thousands of lives to capture. They were beginning to realize that humans were not like other species in the galaxy. Humans were something different. Something they did not understand. And tomorrow, there would be more footage to watch, more impossible human behavior to witness, more questions without answers. As they went to bed that night, each of the alien cadets wondered the same thing. What kind of species fights like death means nothing? What kind of people throw their lives away for rocks and ruins and pride? They would find out soon enough. And when they did, it would change everything they thought they knew about courage, sacrifice, and what it meant to be willing to die for something bigger than yourself. The humans had many more lessons to teach them, and some of those lessons would be harder to watch than anything they had seen so far. By the third day, word had spread through the academy about Admiral Park's class. Other cadets whispered in the hallways about the shocking human footage. Some were curious. Others were disturbed. A few had already requested transfers to different courses. Haiyan-Wu and Beale walked to class together, both looking pale and tired. They had spent the night talking about what they had seen. Nothing made sense anymore. Maybe we should ask for a break, Beale suggested. Tell the Admiral we need time to process this information. No, Haiyan-Wu replied, though his voice shook. We need to understand. Our people sent us here to learn about the galaxy. This is part of it. When they reached the classroom, they found Taeho and So Young already in their seats. Taeho's crystal body was darker than usual, and So Young's patterns showed deep purple, the color of fear in her species. Admiral Park entered exactly on time, as always. But today, something was different. His face looked even more serious, and his eyes seemed older. Before we begin, he said, I want to address the requests I have received. 3 cadets have asked for a recess. 5 others want to transfer to different classes. The alien students looked at each other nervously. I understand your discomfort, the Admiral continued. What you are seeing challenges everything you know about logical behavior, but I cannot grant these requests. You need to see the full picture to understand. He pressed the button and the screen came down. Today we will study guerrilla warfare and sieges. We will look at conflicts where humans fought against impossible odds for years at a time. The screen flickered to life, showing a thick jungle. Green plants covered everything. The air looked hot and steamy. Human soldiers moved carefully through the dense vegetation, their weapons ready. This is Vietnam, Admiral Park said. A jungle war that lasted over a decade. Humans fought an enemy they could rarely see in terrain that wanted to kill them. The footage showed humans wading through swamps filled with dangerous creatures. It showed them cutting through vines and thorns that tore at their skin. It showed them sleeping in mud while insects bit them and disease spread through their ranks. So Young watched in amazement as human Soldiers walked through water that would have dissolved her people's gills. They moved through heat that would have cooked a Vextai alive. They endured humidity that would have cracked Teho's crystal body. The jungle itself was their enemy, Admiral Park explained. Disease killed more humans than bullets, but they adapted, they learned, they survived. The screen showed a human patrol being attacked by invisible enemies. Gunfire came from the trees, but there was no one to shoot back at. Explosions erupted from the ground where hidden traps waited. The humans in the patrol took casualties, but they did not panic, they did not run. They organized themselves and fought back, even though they could not see their targets. Hyung Woo felt sick watching it. How can they fight an enemy they cannot see? By becoming better than their enemy, Admiral Park replied. By learning faster, adapting quicker, and never giving up. The footage changed to show something even more disturbing. It was a city, but not like the frozen ruins of Stalingrad. This city was under siege, surrounded by enemies who wanted to starve the people inside. This is Leningrad, the admiral said. The siege lasted 872 days. Over 1 million civilians died of starvation and cold. The screen showed human families huddled in basements while bombs fell above them. It showed people eating grass and tree bark because there was no real food. It showed children who were nothing but skin and bones, too weak to stand. The Biel began to hyperventilate again. Her breathing came in quick, shallow gasps. Why didn't they surrender? She whispered. Why didn't they just open the gates and let the attackers in? Because surrender meant slavery or death for everyone, Admiral Park said. So they chose to die fighting instead of living on their knees. The footage showed humans melting snow for water. It showed them burning furniture to stay warm. It showed them eating leather and wallpaper paste to fill their empty stomachs, but they never surrendered. Teho's crystal body was flickering rapidly, a sign of deep distress in his people. This is not war, he said. This is mass suicide. No intelligent species would endure this. Intelligence has nothing to do with it, Admiral Park replied. This is about will. About refusing to break, no matter how much pressure is applied. The screen showed more scenes from the siege. Human. Musicians performing concerts in bomb shelters to keep people's spirits up. Human doctors operating on patients by candlelight. Human teachers holding classes for children in the basements while explosions shook the city above. They were dying. But they were still living, still hoping. Still human. So Young's water suit was bubbling violently with her agitation. In her culture, survival was everything. If staying in a city meant death, you left the city. It was simple logic, but these humans had nowhere to go, so they stayed, and they died. And somehow they won. The siege was finally broken, Admiral Park said. The city was saved, but the cost was terrible. The footage changed again, showing a different kind of horror. Now it showed bombed cities where human civilians dug through rubble looking for survivors. It showed humans sharing their last pieces of bread with strangers. It showed humans carrying wounded enemies to safety. Even in the worst conditions, the admiral explained, humans maintained their humanity. They helped each other. They showed mercy to their enemies. They built hospitals in the ruins of their cities. Hyunwoo could not understand it. They show kindness to the same people who are trying to kill them. Sometimes, Admiral Park said, humans have a saying, we judge ourselves by our intentions, but others by their actions. Even in war, they try to see the humanity in their enemies. The screen showed human medics treating wounded enemy soldiers. It showed human pilots dropping food to starving civilians in occupied cities. It showed human soldiers sharing their rations with enemy prisoners. It made no sense. In every other species the cadets knew about, enemies were enemies. You did not help them. You did not show them mercy. You did not waste resources on them, but humans were different. The footage continued, showing battle after battle, siege after siege. It showed humans fighting in frozen tundra and burning deserts. It showed them fighting underground in tunnels and high in the mountains. It showed them fighting in space and under the ocean. Everywhere they fought, the pattern was the same. Impossible odds, terrible losses, but never surrender. Tejo spoke up, his voice barely a whisper. Admiral, how many conflicts like this has your species fought? Admiral Park was quiet for a long moment. Hundreds, he finally said. Maybe thousands. We have been fighting wars like this for our entire recorded history. And you never learned. To stop? So Young asked in horror. We learned many things, the Admiral replied. We learned how to fight better. We learned how to win with fewer casualties. We learned how to make peace last longer between wars. But we never learned to stop. When stopping meant abandoning our principles. The screen went dark. The class was over, but none of the alien cadets moved. They sat in their seats, trying to process what they had seen. Finally, Bill stood up on shaking legs. Admiral, she said, I formally request immediate transfer out of this program. Denied, Admiral Park said simply. Then I request permission to withdraw from the Academy entirely. Also denied. Buell's eyes filled with tears. I cannot watch any more of this. My people are not made for this kind of horror. Admiral Park looked at her with something that might have been sympathy. Cadet Bill, do you know why your people have never experienced a major war? She shook her head. Because for the last 3,000 years, other species have been fighting wars so you would not have to. Species like mine. The 4 alien friends left the classroom in silence. They walked through the halls like ghosts, their minds filled with images of human suffering and human courage. That evening they sat in their common room, not speaking. Finally, Tejo broke the silence. I have lived for 800 years, he said slowly. I have studied the history of dozens of species. I thought I understood warfare. And now? Haiyan-Wu asked. Now I realize I have never seen real war. What? My people call war is just ... disagreement, debate with weapons. But this ... he gestured helplessly at the air. This is something else entirely. So Young floated in her suit, her patterns shifting between colors of fear and confusion. They fight like they are already dead, like death is just another tactic to be used? Maybe it is, Beale whispered. Maybe that is why they are so terrifying. They sat in silence again, each lost in their own thoughts. Outside the windows, the stars looked different now, less peaceful, more dangerous, because somewhere out there were humans. And humans, they were learning, were something the galaxy had never seen before. The 4th morning was different. When Haiyan-Wu woke up, he found his sister Biel packing her belongings into a travel case. What are you doing? He asked, though he already knew the answer. I am leaving, Biel said without looking at him. I cannot do this anymore. I cannot watch any more humans die for nothing. It is not for nothing, Haiyan-Wu said, but his voice was weak. He was not sure he believed his own words. Then what is it for? But Biel turned to face him, and he saw that she had been crying. What is worth watching children die on beaches? What is worth seeing people starve in frozen cities? Haiyan-Wu had no answer. Down the hall, Tejo was having his own crisis. His crystal body had turned completely black during the night, something that had never happened before in his 800 years of life. He stood in front of the mirror, staring at his dark reflection, the images from Admiral Park's class, played over and over in his mind. Humans throwing themselves at machine guns, humans eating tree bark to survive sieges, humans fighting wars that lasted decades. His people, the Morden, had fought exactly 3 wars in their recorded history. Each one lasted less than a week. When casualties reached even 50 individuals, both sides would call for peace talks. It was civilized. It was rational, but humans were not rational. In the water section, So Young floated motionless in her suit. She had not moved for hours. Her gills barely moved as she breathed. Her skin patterns had faded to gray, the color of deep depression in her species. She kept thinking about the human medics, running into gunfire to save their wounded in Relinary. Culture, if someone was badly hurt during a conflict, you would remember them fondly and move on. Risking more lives to save someone who might die anyway was considered foolish, But the humans did it over and over again. When the three friends met for breakfast, they barely spoke. Biol announced that she had filed formal withdrawal papers. Taeho said he was requesting a transfer to xenobiology studies. So Young had submitted a report to the Galactic Council, claiming that humans were psychologically unstable and should not be allowed in combat roles. "We have to go to class one more time," Hyun-woo said quietly. "To tell Admiral Park we are leaving." The others nodded reluctantly. They owed him that much at least, but when they reached the classroom, Admiral Park was not there. Instead, a message on the screen told them to report to his office immediately. The four cadets walked through the halls of the academy with heavy hearts. Other students stared at them. Word had spread that the humans class was breaking cadets' minds. Some species had already complained to the academy administrators. Admiral Park's office was small and simple. The walls were covered with pictures of human soldiers in ships. On his desk sat a small flag and some medals in a glass case. "Sit down," the admiral said when they entered. His voice was gentler than usual. The four aliens took seats across. From his desk, Biel immediately started talking. "Admiral, I must withdraw from your program. The things you have shown us are too disturbing. My people are not equipped to handle this level of violence." "I understand," Admiral Park said. "Cadet Taeho, I assume you feel the same way?" Taeho's dark crystal body flickered slightly. "Yes. Sir, I have filed a report stating that humans are unsuited for modern galactic civilization. Your species is too aggressive, too willing to die for minor objectives. And you, Cadet So Young?" So Young's patterns shifted to a dull brown. "My people believe humans are dangerous. You fight without logic, you die without reason. It is ... frightening." Admiral Park nodded slowly, then he looked at Hyun-woo. "And you, Cadet Hyun-woo, do you also wish to leave?" Hyun-woo looked at his friends, then back at the admiral. "I do not understand your people, sir, but I need to, because what we have seen, it cannot be meaningless. No species survives by being stupid, so there must be a reason." The admiral smiled for the first time since they had met him. It was a sad smile, but genuine. "You are correct, Cadet Hyun-woo. There is a reason. But before I explain, I want to talk to each of you individually." He pressed a button on his desk. "Cadet Bill, please stay. The others wait outside." Hyun-woo, Taeho, and So Young left the office and sat in the hallway. Through the door they could hear the admiral's voice, though they could not make out the words. Inside the office, Admiral Park leaned back in his chair and studied Bill carefully. "Tell me about your homeworld," he said. Bill looked confused. "Sir, humor me, what is Vexti Prime like?" "It is beautiful," Bill said slowly. "We have 3 moons and gentle weather. The cities are made of crystal and light. The people are happy and peaceful. We have not had a war in over 1,000 years. How many people live on your world?" "About 50 million. And how many of them go hungry?" "None, sir. We have abundant resources." "How many die of disease?" "Very few. We have excellent medical care." "How many live in fear?" Biol was quiet for a moment. "None, sir. Why would they?" "Admiral." Park nodded. "Your species mastered faster than light travel without ever experiencing true hardship. You have never been tested by real adversity. You have never had to choose between death and dishonor." "But that is a good thing," Biol protested. "Peace is better than war." "You are absolutely right," the admiral agreed. "Peace is better than war. But sometimes peace must be defended. And sometimes the people who defend it must be willing to pay a terrible price." He called in Taeho next. 800 years old, the admiral mused, looking at Taeho's file. "Your people live for millennia because your crystal bodies can heal from almost any damage. Yes, sir? You have never had to face true mortality. Death, for your people, is a distant concept. Something that happens to others, not to you." Taeho's body flickered. "We are not immortal, Admiral. We can die, but you do not expect to. When you make decisions, you assume you will be around to see the consequences. Humans do not have that luxury." Admiral Park pulled up a holographic display showing human lifespans compared to other galactic species. The average human lives about 80 years. Some less, some more, but we know our time is limited. We know that every day might be our last. This changes how we think, how we act, how we value things. Tejo stared at the display in shock. 80 years was nothing. It was barely enough time to learn how to think properly. Your species is children, he whispered. Yes, Admiral Park said. Children who learned to fight like adults because we had no choice. When So Young entered the office, Admiral Park activated her species file. Relinary culture values individual survival above all else, he read. When faced with danger, a relinary will save themselves first, then consider helping others if it is safe to do so. It is logical, So Young said defensively. Dead people cannot help anyone. You are right, the Admiral said. It is logical. Your people evolved in deep oceans where resources were scarce and cooperation was rare. Individual survival was the only way your species could continue. He brought up another display showing Earth's history. Humans evolved differently. We lived in groups. We hunted together, built together, survived together. An individual human alone would die quickly. So we learned that sometimes one person must sacrifice for the group to survive. So Young's patterns shifted to confused orange. But in the footage, humans die for small things. Pieces of land, buildings, symbols. Those things represent something larger, Admiral Park explained. They represent the group, the tribe, the family. The idea that some things are worth dying for because without them, life has no meaning. Finally, he called Hyun-woo back into the office alone. You said you wanted to understand, the Admiral said. Are you prepared for the truth? Hyun-woo nodded. Though his hands were shaking, Admiral Park activated his computer and brought up a classified file. The header read, Classified Devourer Threat Assessment. 6 months ago, the Admiral said quietly, our deep space monitors detected something at the edge of the galaxy. A fleet of ships unlike anything we have ever seen. They are not from our galaxy? Hyun-woo leaned forward, his eyes wide. We call them the Devourers, Admiral Park continued. They consume entire star systems, leaving nothing behind. No planets, no stars. Nothing but empty space. The display showed images that made Hyun-woo's blood freeze. Massive ships, dark as space itself, surrounding dying stars. Planets being torn apart and consumed. Solar systems reduced to dust and darkness. They will reach the outer rim worlds in 18 months, Admiral Park said. Galactic Command estimates that most member species will need to evacuate to the core worlds. But someone has to slow them down. Someone has to buy time for the evacuation. Hyun-woo stared at the images, finally understanding. You are going to fight them, he whispered. Yes, Admiral Park said. Not just us, but mostly us. Because when the choice comes between dying and running, humans have a bad habit of choosing to die. The Admiral closed the file and looked directly at Hyun-woo. This is why I am showing you those old wars. This is why you need to understand what humans are capable of. Because in 18 months, we are going to do it again. We are going to charge the machine guns and hold the cities and fight the impossible fight. But you will all die, Hyun-woo said, his voice breaking. Most of us, Admiral Park agreed. Maybe all of us. But that is not the point. Then what is the point? Admiral. Park stood up and walked to the window. Outside, alien cadets from dozens of worlds. That night, Hyun-woo could not sleep. He lay in his bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about the dark ships at the edge of the galaxy, thinking about worlds being consumed until nothing remained, thinking about what Admiral Park had told him. In the morning, he found his sister Byul sitting by the window again, but this time she was not looking at the stars. She was looking at her packed bags. I talked to Admiral Park yesterday, Hyun-woo said quietly. So did I, Byul replied. He told me why humans fight the way they do. And? Byul was quiet for a long moment. I am not sure I believe him, but I am not sure I can leave either. Down the hall, Tejo stood in front of his mirror again. His crystal body was still dark, but now it flickered with tiny points of light, like stars in the night sky. He had spent the entire night thinking about what the Admiral had told him. 80 years. That was all humans had? Less than 1/10 of a single Morden lifespan. And yet they built civilizations that lasted thousands of years. They created art and music and literature that would outlive them by centuries. How could they care so much about the future when they would barely be around to see it? In the water section, So Young floated motionless, but her patterns had changed. Instead of the gray of depression, she now showed deep blue, the color of deep thought in her people. She kept thinking about the human medics, the way they ran into danger to save others. In her culture, it was considered wasteful and stupid. But now she wondered, what if those medics knew something her people did not? What if there were things worth risking your life for? When the four friends met for breakfast, they did not talk about leaving anymore. Instead, they walked silently to Admiral Park's classroom, unsure of what they would find. The Admiral was there, as always, standing straight and serious. But today the screen was not ready. Today he looked different, older somehow, more tired. Today will be our last class together, he announced. But before we finish, I want to show you something different. Not historical footage this time, current footage. He pressed the button and the screen came down. Instead of black and white images from the past, they saw clear, colorful images from the present. The screen showed a human space station orbiting a blue and green planet. Ships were docked at the station, and people in uniforms moved through the corridors with quick, efficient steps. This is Outpost 7, Admiral Park said. It was built 6 months ago, right on the edge of human space. The edge of all galactic space. The footage showed human families boarding transport ships, children saying goodbye to their parents, couples embracing before separating, elderly people volunteering for work they would never return from. These are volunteers, the Admiral explained. People who signed up to establish forward colonies on worlds directly in the Devourer's path. Han Wei watched in amazement as human civilians, not soldiers, just ordinary people boarded ships bound for certain death. They were teachers and doctors and engineers and farmers. They were mothers and fathers and grandparents, and they were all smiling. I don't understand, Bill whispered. Why are they happy? They know they are going to die. Because they are doing something that matters, Admiral Park said. They are buying time for their children to escape. They are giving meaning to their deaths. The screen showed more scenes. Human scientists designing weapons they would never live to see used. Human engineers building evacuation ships for alien species while their own worlds prepared for war. Human artists creating monuments to remember civilizations that would soon be destroyed. So Young watched a human mother recording a message for her daughter, who was being evacuated to the safe core worlds. The woman spoke calmly about love and hope and the importance of remembering the stars. She knows she will never see her child again, So Young said in wonder. Yes, Admiral Park replied. But she also knows her child will live. And for humans, that is enough. The footage changed to show military preparations. But these were not like the historical battles they had seen before. These humans were not fighting other humans over territory or resources or pride. They were preparing to fight monsters from beyond the galaxy itself. Tejo watched human engineers working on massive space fortifications. They were building weapons designed to stop forces that could destroy entire star systems. The humans working on these projects looked determined but not afraid. They know it is hopeless, he said quietly. The Devourers have already consumed dozens of galaxies. What can one species do against that? Probably nothing, Admiral Park admitted. But we are going to try anyway, because trying is what humans do. The screen showed human admirals planning battles where victory was measured not in survival, but in how much time they could buy. It showed human pilots volunteering for one-way missions. It showed human soldiers saying goodbye to families they would never see again, but it also showed something else. It showed alien refugees being loaded onto evacuation ships bound for the safe core worlds. It showed human resources being diverted to protect species that had never done anything for humanity. It showed humans working day and night to save people who were not their own. Biol felt something strange happening in her chest, a feeling she had never experienced before. "They are going to die for us," she whispered, "for people they don't even know." "Yes," Admiral Park said simply, "but why?" Hyun-woo asked. "What do you gain from our survival?" Admiral Park was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than they had ever heard it. "Have you ever seen a Vextai crystal garden?" he asked Biel. She nodded, confused by the change of subject. "I visited one once on a diplomatic mission. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. Light dancing through crystal formations that took centuries to grow. Art that will outlast my species by millions of years." He turned to Taeho. "And modern philosophical texts. I have read some of the translations, wisdom accumulated over millennia. Insights about the nature of existence that humans could never achieve in our short lifespans." "To So Young," he said, "relinary deep ocean music. I heard a recording once. Sounds that can only be made in the depths of water worlds. Beautiful in ways that air-breathing species cannot truly understand." The 4 alien cadets looked at him with growing amazement. "You see," Admiral Park continued, "humans may be good at dying, but you are good at living. You create beauty that lasts. You develop wisdom that endures. You make the universe a richer, more wonderful place." He gestured to the screen, which now showed images of the galaxy's many worlds and species. "If the Devourers consume everything, all of that will be lost. The crystal gardens, the philosophical texts, the deep ocean music. Billions of years of evolution and culture and art gone forever." The Admiral looked directly at each of them in turn. "We cannot let that happen. We will not let that happen, even if it costs us everything." The classroom was completely silent. The 4 alien friends sat frozen in their seats, finally understanding what they had been seeing all along. The humans in those old wars had not been fighting for land, or resources, or even survival. They had been fighting for the right of others to exist. They had been dying so that something beautiful could continue, just like they were preparing to do now. Slowly, Biol stood up. Her voice was steady when she spoke. "Admiral, I withdraw my transfer request. I want to stay in your program." Taeho's crystal body began to glow with warm light. "As do I, sir. I want to learn how to fight beside humans." So Young's patterns shifted to bright gold, the color of determination in her species. "My people need to know what yours are planning to do for us. I want to help prepare them." Admiral Park nodded to each of them, then looked at Hyun-Wood at double quotes and you, Cadet. "What do you want to do?" Hyun-Woo stood up slowly. His pale face was set with new resolve. "I want to learn everything you can teach me, sir. Because someone should remember what you are about to do for us. Someone should tell the story of the species that saved the galaxy." Admiral Park smiled, not the sad smile from before, but something genuine and proud. "Then we continue tomorrow," he said. "But now you will be learning not just history, but tactics. Not just what humans have done, but what we are going to do." As the 4 friends left the classroom, they walked differently than before. Their steps were steadier. Their eyes were clearer. They had seen the darkness coming for the galaxy, and they had seen the light that would hold it back. That evening, they sat together in their common room, but this time they were not silent with horror. They were planning. "My people have evacuation ships," So Young said. "We could modify them to carry more refugees. The Morden have crystal technology that could strengthen human fortifications." Taeho added, "Vextai energy manipulation could power human weapons," Biel said quietly. Hyun-Woo looked at his friends with growing excitement. "We can help. We may not be able to fight like humans, but we can support them. We can make their sacrifice count for more. Outside their window, the stars looked the same as always. But now the 4 alien cadets knew the truth. Those stars were not eternal. They could be snuffed out, consumed by darkness from beyond the galaxy, but they also knew something else. As long as humans existed, as long as there were people willing to charge the machine guns and hold the cities and fight the impossible fight, there was hope. The darkness was coming. But it would not find the galaxy defenseless.